Democrats are projected to hold on to their narrow Senate majority after Senator Catherine Cortez Masto eked out a win in Nevada Saturday night, beating back a furious challenge from Republicans who sought to seize on voters' growing economic and political angst in an effort to upend unified Democratic control of Washington. The outcome means that Senate Democrats can breathe a collective sigh of relief after a volatile midterm election campaign that underscored just how tenacious the party's hold on power was. However, the midterms aren't finished yet. The Senate race in Georgia has gone to a December 5th runoff, meaning Democrats will have a chance to expand their majority by an additional seat. While the party was defending far fewer seats this year than Republicans, it went into the election with only the narrowest of Senate majorities. The GOP needed to net only one seat to recapture control of the upper chamber. At the same time, the political environment was bruising for Democrats. Towering inflation, concerns about rising crime, and fears of a looming economic recession all combined to form a political storm that threatened to sweep Democrats out of their congressional majorities. Democrats also faced a grim historical outlook. With few exceptions, the party in power almost always loses ground in Congress in midterm elections. The fight for control of the Senate ultimately centered on a handful of battleground states, spanning from Pennsylvania to Arizona, while Democrats found themselves playing defense in places like Georgia, Nevada, New Hampshire, and Arizona. They also pursued Republican held seats in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Ohio. Even as the midterms posed an existential threat to Democrat Senate majority, the elections also exposed some Republican weaknesses. GOP voters in states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona nominated a series of untested, controversy prone candidates, in most cases at the behest of former President Trump, who struggled to keep pace with their Democratic rivals in fundraising and often found themselves fending off questions about their personal histories and qualifications. Among those candidates were former NFL star Herschel Walker, the Republican Senate nominee in Georgia, venture capitalist Blake Masters, GOP candidate in Arizona who lost to Senator Mark Kelly on Friday night, and celebrity physician Mehmet Oz, the Republican nominee in Pennsylvania who was defeated by John Fetterman on Tuesday. While Republican leaders in Washington ultimately coalesced behind their roster of Senate nominees, the candidates also fueled some animosity between party officials. Um, Earlier this year, a spat erupted between Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senator Rick Scott, the chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, after McConnell offered a thinly veiled criticism of the quality of GOP Senate candidates. Nevertheless, Republicans carried out a potent messaging strategy, hitting Democrats relentlessly on everything from the rate of inflation to public safety. That playbook helped GOP candidates in key states close in on their Democratic opponents in the final month of the campaign. But Democrats were also bolstered by a roster of battle tested candidates to overcome the unfriendly political terrain. Some vulnerable incumbents like Kelly and Senator Raphael Warnock cast themselves independent minded public servants who had accomplished big things in their short time in Washington and were prolific fundraisers. Of course, the country's next election, 2024, are also supposed to be brutal for Senate Democrats. The party will have to defend nearly 24 seats in 2 years to the GOP's 10, giving Republicans another chance to win the majority. Now, mark my words, I think the Republicans are probably going to win the majority in 2024 just because of how many seats it is. I could be wrong, but that's just the way it seems to me. So I remember when Warnock was up against, I think that was Loeffler in Georgia, and there were people who were saying, "Oh, I hope Warnock wins so the Democrats can have a majority. So this way, when they don't pass something, we can, blame them and they have no excuses." And after they got a majority, I start hearing about the filibuster. I start hearing about how Manchin doesn't want to work with any of them, and he wants to find a bipartisan solution that both sides can come together on. And you have effectively one senator who gets to destroy the party, taint their agenda with Build Back Better. But then this same party that's too weak to stand up to one senator to get him to fall in line and to, or at the very least, to compromise in ways that actually result in positive change, what happens to them? Do they lose their seats? Do voters get sick of them and throw them out after they've proven themselves to be ineffective in giving them the things that they need to survive? Oh no, they get a big boost earlier this year when it turns out that Roe v. Wade is on the chopping block from the Supreme Court. A um, ruling that the Democrats chose to not protect in the previous years of them having the presidency, the Senate, and the House. So, by failing to protect the rights that they claim to care so much about, they are then given an additional fundraising boost and a second wind. Because now people are saying, look, Democrats aren't that great, but that other party is way worse. And, the article mentions people like Walker and Oz. And, my thing about that has been like him or hate him, Trump is responsible for the celebrity candidate. Now any random person who has had no experience with government can run, and if they repeat the talking points of whoever their head of state or main cult leader is, they can get it. I mean, I'm fully convinced if I was like someone who didn't have a channel, or even now because I'm not big on here anyway. If I went to a state like I don't know, what's a red state? Wyoming. I mean, the absolute after what they did to Liz, I wouldn't even be surprised. But if I went somewhere like there and I said, we need to stop these socialist Democrats from trying to stick government in our programs, and we need deregulations, and we got to build this wall. I guarantee, if I didn't win, I would get at least 20 or 30% of the vote. I could just come out of nowhere and start repeating this stuff, just all these talking points about free, no regulations and free enterprise and opportunity, and it wouldn't even be a question of whether I would get votes or not. So that's the part of the article I kind of am a little iffy about, because I do think you just have to expect that in this era, people that you've never heard of are going to appear out of the woodwork, repeat the talking points of their dear leader, and then they're going to see how far they can go. But I really hope the people who voted for, and I always try to explain this to people because they'll say, "Oh, you want the Republicans?" So I said, "No. When you have a party that knows that it can let its voters down and not face a consequence, they're going to get complicit with it." So yeah, the Democrats might be running on, "Oh, if you vote for us, we're going to codify Roe v. Wade. If you vote for us, we're going to get rid of some of your student loan debts. If you vote for us, this is 2 years ago, we're going to give you a stimulus check of et cetera, et cetera." But then what happens? They win the election. All the people that were so scared of the evil, big, bad Republicans getting in office do this. And when they barely get any of the stuff they need to survive that they were promised by these lying politicians, they pretty much forget about it. Or if they remember, they don't care enough to sit back and actually make there be some merit or consequence to letting them down, because they're so afraid of what's going to happen if the evil, big, bad Republicans take over. Like I'm just thinking about how in 2 years we haven't even started the new Congress, and we already know this. They're not going to codify Roe v. Wade. Biden is not going to cancel student loan debt. Manchin is going to be able to block whatever he wants, and the Democrats are still going to go and try to campaign and get him to keep his West Virginia Senate seats in 2024. And most people are going to completely go back to ignoring this stuff. That's what's so bittersweet about this. Like, when Republicans take office, people protest. If they do something wrong, people actually care. They're like, "Hey, what the hell is this?" They get together and they show just the slightest bit of outrage over like being screwed over in some way that they deem, messed up. But when Democrats get in power and do nothing to help people, and then, just sit around for 2 to 4 years collecting checks and showing up on TV, everybody goes back to sleep, and I'm tired of it. And that's why I just have like no excitement whatsoever for the rest of Biden's term, because it's going to be just as impossible for him to pass anything, even the few good things that he does. And I know that people are going to go, "Well, Democrats still have this one chamber and they barely lost the other one, so they can compromise and then maybe we can get some. It's sad that we're just in this never-ending loop of nothing improving. It's just people voting for one side because the other one is the scarier adversary.